So very, very warm welcome to you. My name is Subhadramati, and I'm sitting here in the London Buddhist Centre shrine room. And I'm here with Polly and Ariane, and we all live here, actually. We live as part of a community here at the London Buddhist Centre. So I'm just going to get Polly and Ariane to come and say hello as well. So this is Ariane. And this is Polly, and so we're your team for this evening. And as I say, we all live here, and as part of one of the Buddhist communities at the London Buddhist Centre. We've got 3 communities, so that's great. So because it means we can be here and host you this evening. So this evening is part of our home retreat. So we have a class here every Monday evening online. And this week is extra special because it's part of our home retreat that we started last night. And we've got more than 1,000 people on this home retreat. So if you're not already on the home retreat and you'd like to be, you can sign up, and the link will just be posted just now. It's completely free to sign up. And actually, there's great advantages to signing up because it means we can send you the Zoom link for the morning meditations and all sorts of things. You'll be able to join in lots of the events of the retreat. So so do just sign up for the retreat if you're not already on that. So this is our home retreat. So I'm going to just say a little bit about the home retreat, and I'm going to then say a bit about the format for the evening tonight, and then we will get started. Our home retreat started last night in this very shrine room. We all introduced ourselves to each other in small groups. The biggest amount of groups I'd ever had on a retreat, 50 groups we had, all introducing ourselves. And we had a special ritual to dedicate the retreat. And then today already, we've had early morning meditation, kind of a little bit later meditation. So early morning was at 7 o'clock. There was another meditation at 8 and 8:30. There was another meditation session at 10. Yoga at 12, some Buddhist study at 4. So that's all the things that we've been doing so far. And also we broke into groups in the morning. So I just thought I'd respond to some of the things some of you were saying in the groups. I really enjoy my group very much, actually. So hello to everyone from my group. It's very, very nice part of the retreat that every day you get to meet just a few people in a group, and there's other ways of meeting as well, which I'll tell you about in a moment. So much to say about this retreat. I don't quite know what to say first, but what I will say is, we were hearing from the groups, about how much people were enjoying being on this home retreat, but also it's a bit unusual being on retreat in your own home. Some of you might have been on residential retreats before. Some of you might have never been on a retreat before. So some people were saying, that being at home on retreat is quite distracting. And I can imagine the sort of distractions that are around at home. And other people were saying, what to do in between events on the retreat. So we've got, these various things on the program that I've been telling you about. But what about the in-between times? And probably if we can look at the in-between times, then that'll help us with the distraction as well. So one thing I'd really, really encourage you to do on this retreat, actually even, in a way in our lives, I'd really encourage us to do this, is to really look at can we reduce input. So how about for the week of the retreat, even though we're at home, even though we might be going to work and stuff, we could really reduce input. So you might think to yourself, for example, tell you what, I'm not going to switch my phone on until after the morning session of the retreat. And I'm going to switch it off before the evening session and not switch it on again, after we finish tonight. That would be a great way of reducing input, and that will have an effect on your mind. That will ease the distraction. Because if we're always looking at our phone every 2 seconds, we're just agitating our minds. We all do it. I do it myself. We want depth, but we are sort of addicted to the surface of our mind. And the world is trying to sort of conspires to feed that addiction, as it were, doesn't it? Everybody wants a piece of our mind. Yeah, we're always getting messages and so on. So that would be, I would really encourage you for this week of the retreat, just to really try reducing input, switch off devices. When you go out on your walk, if you're able to go out, just go out without your headphones, just go out and just enjoy. If you can get to a park, that's great. But even this, if you're just walking along your street, you'll be able to just enjoy the blue sky and the odd tree. So try doing one thing at a time, like eating a meal without, the telly on or something. That will really, really help simplify your life. And then that will open the sort of door, as it were, to connect with beauty. So really try wherever you can to connect with beauty, the beauty of nature. Even in a city like London, we can connect with the beauty of nature. In the morning meditations, I'm going to be reading a poem each morning. So you could just take a poem and, read it a few times to yourself, even try learning a poem. That's a lovely way to connect with beauty. And then the other thing you can do in the sort of unprogrammed times on the retreat is we've got a Slack group, and Polly's just going to post the link for that. And that's what we're trying to do with that is sort of replicate the lounge on the retreat, where you might just go and hang out with people and chat and so on. So on that group, you're very welcome to join that group. What we're suggesting is, when you're chatting to people in that group, chat about the retreat and what you're learning about the retreat. You can post photographs as well. So, why not take a photograph of something beautiful and post it in that group? And in that way, you'll be connecting with beauty, but also we'll be building a community of connecting with beauty. So that's some of the things that you can do to help you stay on retreat. I think that's really one of the arts of being on retreat, is just stay on retreat. It's easier on a residential retreat because you're out in the country and there's not so many places to go. But here, just have an intention of staying on retreat. Yeah, just giving it your best shot. It definitely will have an effect. I absolutely can promise that. That it will have an effect if you just really stay with it the whole week, and just keep coming to everything, coming to all the events. So that's a bit about the retreat in general. And as I say, even if you haven't yet signed up for the retreat, it's not too late. It's only the first day, so there's lots more days of the retreat, and there's loads of advantages to signing up, and it's free. So no reason in a way not to sign up for the retreat. Good. So now I'm going to say a little bit about the format of the evening. So welcome if you've joined us since we started. I'm Subhadramati. I'm in the London Buddhist Centre large shrine room. So the format of the evening is going to go on till 9 o'clock with a little tea break in the middle. So I'm going to talk for a bit. Every evening we're going to have a Buddhist talk. Tonight's talk is the Buddhist meaning of meditation. So I'm going to talk for a bit. Then we're going to actually meditate together. Then we're going to have a tea break. Then we're going to come back and I'm going to just talk a little bit more. And then one of the most interesting parts of the evening, which is a chance for questions and hopefully answers, at least responses from me. So as I'm talking, just make a mental note of any questions you might have, things you want clarified, and then you can feed them. They'll be fed to me by my lovely crew, and then I'll try my best to respond to your questions. And then we're going to end with a short ritual, and then we'll finish at 9 o'clock. So that's the format of the evening. So hopefully that all sounds good. Great. So let's now begin. Maybe I'll just check how many people we've got with us now. It's probably gone up a little bit. 255. So welcome all 255 people to each and every one of you. Delightful to all be together on a Monday evening, hearing about what is the relevance of the Buddhist teachings for us today, and that we're going to be meditating together. Okay, so tonight my subject is the Buddhist meaning of meditation. We're going to have a talk every night, and they're cumulative. So the Buddhist meaning of meditation. So the Buddhist word for meditation is Samadhi. So there's a new Buddhist word for some of you, Samadhi. And it means something like energized calm. And, behind me, you can see the image of the Buddha. And that really is an image of a being resting in Samadhi, resting in energized calm. I hope you can see that. Hope the figure conveys that to you. There's a beautiful calm, but at the same time, there's an alertness. There's energy, radiance even. So Samadhi is energized calm. The mind of the Buddha is completely still. Actually, it's not just the mind, the whole being of the Buddha is completely still. He's physically still, he's mentally still, there's no distractions anymore at all. But there's just a sort of mysterious fullness to his mind. And his whole being is still because he's no longer swayed by greed and hatred anymore at all. So that's the stillness of a Buddha, very, very profound. And that's indicated by this word Samadhi, energized calm. So it's very, very attractive, isn't it? So we all want that. I'm sure we all want that Samadhi, that energized calm. And that's what Buddhist meditation is pointing to. But actually, we don't really usually talk about Samadhi on its own. We actually talk about a trio of terms that are all sort of, you can imagine them joined together, like with a hyphen in between them. And the trio goes like this: Sila, Samadhi, Prajna. Sila, Samadhi, Prajna. So 3 terms, but all joined together. And they're all, it's very important that they are all joined together, and I'm going to unfold them. And I'm hopefully, as I unfold these words, you'll see why I'm, kind of putting to you that you can't really, in a Buddhist sense, think of Samadhi on its own. So before tea, I'm going to talk about Sila and the relationship of Sila and Samadhi. And after tea, I'm going to go into Prajna. So Prajna means wisdom. So that'll be after tea. And Sila means behavior. Yeah, so Sila means behavior. And one of the very first things, one of the first things I learned, I kind of learned it the hard way, actually, when I began to meditate, is that, you can't meditate in isolation. I learned the hard way that my behavior when I wasn't meditating was affecting my meditation. In other words, I learned the hard way why there's a hyphen between Sila, behavior, and Samadhi, meditation. And it's a bit embarrassing to have to sort of disclose this, but I'll tell you anyway. So I came along to the Buddhist Center long time ago now, 33 years ago now. So came along as a young woman, and very, in a way, sort of stumbled across it, but very, very taken by meditation, very, very taken by the people I was meeting here. And I started to take up a meditation practice. So started to try and practice meditating every day and coming to the Buddhist Center. And as I was meditating, what I noticed was it started to get harder and harder. And actually not just more difficult, actually a bit painful. I started to feel very uneasy when I was meditating, even a bit nauseous, even a bit almost feeling a bit ill when I was meditating physically. And I thought, oh, I must be doing something wrong. I must have got the instructions wrong. I'll go back and ask the teacher. And so I went and kind of, shyly put my hand up and asked the teacher a question and said, oh, this is happening. And the teacher sort of took me aside after the class and said, so just tell me a little bit about what's going on there in the rest of your life. And I thought, what a weird question. Why is the teacher asking me that? They should be giving me more instruction in meditation, not asking me about this. And I thought it was a very strange question, but I said, oh, well, things aren't too great. And basically I had to admit that I was, not really being honest with other people in my life. And actually, I wasn't really being honest with myself. And gradually the truth dawned on me that it was the fact that I wasn't being honest with other people and in the end not honest with myself that was making it become more and more difficult to meditate. Sort of something had to give in a way. I couldn't keep meditating and keep, not facing this fact about myself that I basically wasn't behaving very well towards other people, but even towards myself. So that was me, in a sense, as I say, learning the hard way that that Sila, behavior, and Samadhi, meditation, are completely linked with each other. They're completely like one informs the other and forms the other back again, and you can't separate them. And then I started to learn a bit more and started to really see that Buddhism talks about Sila in two ways. So there's behavior that's helpful to other people and oneself, and behavior that's unhelpful. And Buddhism would say there's behavior that's skillful and unskillful. Quite interesting, that word, skillful and unskillful. So Buddhism doesn't talk in terms of good and bad so much as skillful and unskillful, which is much more nuanced. And the Buddhist word for skillful is rather lovely. It's kusala. So skillful is kusala and akusala. And what we're trying to do, if we want to meditate, if we want to realize this state of samadhi, is we have to look at our behavior and refine our sensibility so that we can really start to feel and tune into more what is skillful and what is unskillful. And you see how meditation was almost sort of forcing me to do that. The more I meditated, the more I couldn't turn a blind eye to my own behavior, because it was making me more sensitive. It was refining my sensibility. Now, that's not always comfortable, because you have to then face sort of awkward truths. But it's actually very, very positive, because, you start to realize, what you start to realize is that your actions aren't somehow separate from you, that our actions are part of us. And the more we can realize that, not just as a theory, but actually feel it in our hearts and minds, then the more we move towards becoming a whole person, as an integrated person, a reliable person in a sense. We can rely on ourselves, and we can trust ourselves, and other people can trust us. So I hope that's illustrated, giving you a bit of a taste for what this term Sila means and why it's so important. A simple way of saying it is, if you won't meditate for very long or very deeply if you haven't got a clear conscience. Something will start to bite. Something will start to have to give. And meditation itself will make you more sensitive to your actions. So you realize, you realize this distinction between what's skillful and what's unskillful more and more sensitively. It's a bit like our aesthetic sense. You just sort of feel Unskillful things are sort of unbeautiful in a way, and skillful things is more beautiful, both in yourself and in others. So that's the work of becoming more and more sensitive. And what we're really talking about here is a term you're bound to have heard, which is the law of karma. And I'm going to just say a bit about this before we meditate, but I'm really, really hoping that you'll ask questions about this when it comes to question time, because it's very misunderstood, this law of karma. So I'm going to say as best I can what the law of karma is. And this is the area we're talking about. When we're talking about becoming more sensitive to our actions, we're talking about the law of karma. So I'm going to say what it is. But yeah, don't leave any stones unturned in your question of me later. I really want you to understand this. So actually what I'm going to say is what karma isn't. So it's not fate or destiny. Really important to say that because it's such a term that's so bandied around, isn't it? People say, oh, that's my karma, that's her karma, as if it's fate or destiny. So karma isn't fate and destiny, yeah? Also what it isn't, the law of karma isn't saying that everything bad or difficult that happens to you or anyone else is somehow your own fault. Yeah? It's definitely not saying that. There's lots of forces at play, and we actually can't tell. We can't tell which forces at play, really. So it's not saying that. What it is saying is that the consequences of our willed actions are appropriate to the sort of volition that's been the impulse for that action. I'll just say that again. It's saying that the consequences of our willed actions are appropriate to the volitional impulse that's behind that action. So even saying that, it's quite nuanced, isn't it? It's quite subtle. Maybe subtle is a better word than nuanced. It's quite clear, but quite subtle. Yeah. So the law of karma is descriptive rather than prescriptive. It's just describing what happens. Yeah. It's just describing what happens. And yeah, it doesn't work backwards, as it were. You can't take a consequence and say, well, that definitely meant somebody, yourself, acted in a skillful or unskillful way. It doesn't work backwards, but it sort of works forward, and it's simply descriptive. I think another very important thing to say when I'm talking about willed action is that that includes action of mind as well. That's why meditation is so important, because meditation is, we're working directly on our mind, with our mind. When I say mind, I don't mean our brain, but our whole being, our heart as well. But it's important to say that it includes that. So it's not just our actions of body, as it were, not even just our actions of speech, but what we habitually do with our minds. So, if I spend the whole time walking around rehearsing arguments in my head, which I'm afraid I do rather a lot to my embarrassment, getting indignant in my mind, right, working out exactly, what I'm going to say as I come back to such and such, the more I indulge in that, the more that it sort of etches into my mind. That's how the Buddha talked about it. It etches in like a sort of carving and etching into stone. It creates a groove in my mind that makes it harder to stop doing it, actually. So our actions of mind are very, very important and often not considered as actions, but it will affect us. And yeah, that's why meditation, in the sense of this directly working with our mind, is so important. And then the other thing to say, well, I also want to say that it's also mysterious, the whole area of karma and the law of karma. So while on the one hand, As I've said, we can't say that every single thing that happens to us is as a result of our actions. At the same time, we do tend to create the world that we live in. Every time I think of this, I think of a particular friend of mine. He lives in Dublin, an order member in the Dublin Buddhist Centre, Pavara, and he's very, very positive, very, very smiley character, sort of radiant character. And I always think he must experience that the world is really full of happy people. But what he doesn't realize is that they're all happy because he's just walked into the room. Yeah. So he walks into the room, beams at everyone smiles. So to him, the world must seem like a place full of happy, smiling people. Whereas, if one tends to be critical, one might experience the world as rather nervous looking, even maybe frightened people. So I hope that illustrates it a little bit. They're quite simple examples, but we tend to create the world we live in, even in this situation. We're in a pandemic. It's not that that's our fault, but every single person will be responding to that differently. And in that way, creating their world, our world around us, our responses create our worlds. And it's natural, this law of karma. It's natural. It's not coming from anywhere. It's just a natural law. The Buddha didn't invent it, just like Isaac Newton didn't invent the law of gravity. It was simply that the Buddha sort of named it. Perhaps you could even say discovered it in the way that Newton discovered the law of gravity. And what our sort of job is, if we want to have this meditative state of samadhi like the Buddha, is to become as sensitive to the law of karma as you would to the law of gravity. It's sort of instinctual to be sensitive to the law of gravity, almost sort of visceral. I notice whenever I stand a little bit near the edge of a cliff, I notice that sort of tremor in my legs that's telling me, oh, you're too near the edge, Subhadramati. And it's good in a way, that tremor, isn't it? Because it's telling me to step back from the edge. Not that I stand on cliffs that often, but anyway, when I do, I get that little tremor. And I was thinking to myself earlier today, if only I got the same little tremor every time I was about to say something harsh to somebody, every time I was about to, I don't know, all the things I do that I regret. It'd be good actually to be sensitive enough to have that little warning, or you're about to fall off the cliff, Subhadramati. That's what I am working towards. I have got more sensitive since the story I told you way back when I began to meditate, but I'm still not nearly sensitive enough. If I was sensitive enough, the sensitivity would guard me against doing those things I regret. So just a couple more things to say before we meditate. So I hope that's expounded the law of karma for you, and expounded about this term sila and why it's connected with samadhi, why sila, behavior, and samadhi are hyphenated together, are joined together. They're progressive. Usually we say sila comes first and then there's samadhi. But it's not like they're just like building blocks stacked on top of each other. They feed into each other. So the more skillful our behavior, the more that'll enable us to go deeper in meditation. The deeper we go in meditation, the more sensitive we become, that'll feed back into our behavior. So do you see, you get this lovely positive feedback loop happening. And of course, I haven't said much about prajna yet. Prajna is the third in this trio, or wisdom, and that's also connected up in this feedback loop. But I'm going to say more about that after tea. So I hope that's whetted your appetite for that a little bit. So having heard about Samadhi and Sila, we're going to actually practice them now. We're going to practice a meditation together. So what to do now is we're going to dim the lights here. Is set yourself up comfortably, but uprightly. So if you're on a sofa listening to me, maybe move on to something like a kitchen chair, or if that's not possible, sit on your sofa so your feet are flat on the floor like this, and that your back is upright. Or if you're more familiar with meditation and you've got meditation cushions, then now is the time to set yourself up on them. So I'm going to lead us through this meditation, and it's a meditation on loving kindness. People familiar will know this as the metta bhavana. Metta, loving kindness, bhavana, development of, cultivation of, flourishing of. So we're going to meditate to flourish loving kindness. So in that way, we're practicing just what I've been talking about. So let's begin meditating by closing our eyes. Good, and then just starting to settle. So as ever, just see if you can really get a sense of your weight dropping down into the cushions or chair and into the floor. Perhaps imagining the whole base of your posture like a big sack of rice or sand. That's just settling into the floor. And then from that stable base, the rest of your torso rising up. Your spine rising up in its own natural curves. Head just poised and balanced. And see if you can soften your face a little bit more. And see if you can soften your hands a little bit more. And see if you can tune into the sensations in the backs of your hands as well as the palms of your hands. Just notice if that has any effect on the rest of your body. And just tune in to your body breathing. Remember, you don't have to make any effort to breathe. Body is breathing all by itself. And you just pay attention to the actual sensations. And now tuning into your heart center. So, I don't mean your physical heart here, but just the area in the center of your chest. That's your emotional center. Just tune into that area. And notice any sensations there. Even the sensation of not very much sensation. Now, just bring to mind something that's moved you recently. Perhaps something beautiful that you've seen in nature. Perhaps an act of kindness or generosity that you've witnessed or read about. Bring that to mind. And just notice the effect of bringing that to mind. Your mind goes away, just coming back to the body, the breath, and whatever it is that's moved you. And the effect of that. And now bringing to mind a good friend. Someone you already care for and they care for you. And just notice the effect of bringing your good friend to mind. Especially any effect in your heart center. And now in your mind and heart, wishing them well. So you can say as if to them, may you be happy, may you be well, may you be fulfilled. Wishing them well. This is skillful action, kusala karma. find your mind's gone away, again and again coming back to the body, the breath, and sense of your friend and your well-wishing towards them. May they be happy. May they be well. May they be fulfilled. And now we're going to extend this well-wishing to more and more beings. Extending the well-wishing to everyone in your house, in your neighborhood, in your city, people you like, people you don't like, all the vast numbers of people you'll never meet. Wishing them well. And then for the last few moments, just relaxing any efforts you're making. Just coming back to the sense of your body on the chair or cushions. Your breath in your body. Sounds that you can hear. And when you're ready, just opening your eyes and bringing the meditation to a close. Good. Well, very lovely to meditate with you all. Well done, everyone. So what we're going to do now is have a little tea break for 10 minutes. So sorry we can't provide the tea as we usually would if you were here, but you can go and get yourself a cup of tea. We will as well. And we'll be back with you in 10 minutes, or just less than 10 minutes at 8 o'clock. Good. Good. Okay, good. So welcome back from tea, everyone. Hope you had a nice cup of tea. I did. So I'm going to just say a little bit more, and then there'll be a chance for you to ask questions. I think maybe some of you already got some questions, and then we'll end with our ritual. So in the first half, I was talking about this great relationship between Sila and Samadhi. And this is all under the heading, in case you've joined us a bit late, of the Buddhist meaning of meditation. And Samadhi, meditation, is accompanied, or the foundation of Samadhi is Sila, or behavior. And we've been talking about how we refine our sensibility to how our actions affect us and other people's. And I hope I managed to get across that this is a natural thing. So the teachings of the Buddha are all about fulfilling ourselves as human beings, not about sort of cramping or squashing or curtailing ourselves as human beings. So in learning how to be more skillful, all we're doing is drawing out something that's natural. It's natural, but needs drawn out because there's other competing impulses in us. The impulse to be skillful is there, but it's often buried or dulled or squashed. So when we practice, we're practicing to help to draw this out, to become more sensitive to it. But it's about, fulfilling and enhancing our humanness, not squashing or diminishing it. The third in this great trio is prajna, wisdom. Wisdom's probably about the best translation we've got for the Buddhist word prajna. But every translation doesn't quite do justice to the word because, what prajna doesn't mean is it doesn't mean simply knowledge. It might include that to some extent, but it's something far more than knowledge. Wisdom's far more than knowledge. Actually, even in English, we've got that, haven't we? If you think of a wise person, you don't necessarily think of the person who knows the most. So you could think of prajna, wisdom, as the biggest possible perspective, especially a perspective that's so big that it is realized that this sense we have, the sort of common sense view we have of a real me, a real separately existing me in here, as opposed to all of you out there, is actually a construction. It's a construction of mind. The Buddhist life is lived to free ourselves of that sort of false view. It's a common sense view, and it kind of gets us by. But in the end, it's the root of all our fear and all our suffering. That sort of sense of there's a real solid me in here that has to protect and defend itself against everything out there. We'll be hearing a lot more about that on our Friday night talk with Jnanavacha, which is the Buddhist meaning of wisdom. But I just wanted to mention it tonight because it's the third in this trio of Sila, Samadhi, Prajna, all going together. So Sila, Samadhi, the practice of them is, in a way, we practice them in a sense first, but in another sense, not really, but in a sense first, to create a fit mind for prajna. It's almost like to till the soil of the mind, to make sure it's all well nourished with compost and so on, so that when prajna arises, it's really got something substantial to take root in, so that we don't just have kind of vision and insight and it's just sort of blown away because there's nothing, there's no stability there. Sila, Samadhi provides a fit mind for prajna. So if we want insight, if we want wisdom, we have to cultivate these. At the same time, if prana does arise, by its very nature, it means it's less possible to be selfish by its nature, because prana is the seeing through of this sense of a separate me in here and you out there, my will in here, as opposed to your will out there. Prana, by definition, sort of sees through that, dissolves that. So if prana arises, then it is less possible to be selfish. For a Buddha, it's impossible to be selfish. That's kind of the definition of a Buddha. In a way, to the extent that prana, wisdom, has arisen, then selfishness, self-centeredness is no longer possible. It would be against the nature of a Buddha to be selfish. And to the extent that any wisdom has arisen in us, that's a test of it, actually. Are we still being selfish? Because to the more wisdom, the less selfishness. They can't coexist, actually. There still is action when prana has arisen, and there still is skillful action. That doesn't stop, but it's not willed, and in the sense of any sort of selfish willing. It's just pure response. And we've all probably had a taste of that, actually, just that pure response when someone we love is in need, for example. Especially maybe a child that we love is in need. We don't have to think about it. And there's no question of, am I being selfish or not? There's just, one just responds, don't you? It's just the natural thing to do. So we've all had a taste of that. A Buddha, an enlightened being, would respond like that all the time to all beings. If there was anyone suffering, the natural response would just be to help. If there was someone experiencing joy, the natural response would be to experience joy at their joy. If there was no one there at all to respond to, the Buddha would just sit perfectly happily, not responding, as it were. There's nothing neurotic about it. We've all had a taste in that. So I think it's always good to know that we, there's an echo, or at least an echo of an echo of an echo in our own experience. So again, just by my tiny little description of prana, just a little taster really, the main talk being on Friday. But I hope you can see that these three, Sila, Samadhi, prana, they're progressive, but yet they're all feeding into each other. And the more skillful action, the more deep our meditation will be able to go. The more we prepare the soil of our minds and hearts with Sila and Samadhi, the more fit our mind is for insight to arise. The more insight arises, the less possible it is to be selfish. So do you see how that goes right back into skillful action? That means that we're acting more kindly, more generously. In turn, then our meditation will go more deep. In turn, more prana will arise. So you get this positive spiral. That actually is I wish I could sort of draw it in 3 dimensions. If you can imagine a spiral sort of going round and round, but also sort of up and wider, the more expansive our minds and hearts will become, rather than, well, the opposite is our minds and hearts becoming more and more contracted. If we allow ourselves, to do all those things that we do, go round arguments and so on, our minds act them out, then our minds get smaller, more contracted. It's more difficult to meditate. It's less likely that prana will arise, and the whole thing gets in a more tight knot. But at any time, we can start undoing that knot and kind of enter this more spiral, responsive, progressive, augmentative way of being. And that spiral never ends, actually. even a Buddha, we can imagine that spiral responsive way of being is keeping on unfolding. We can imagine that Buddhahood is just the furthest point on the horizon that we can see. That just keeps on unfolding, spiraling up and up, out and out. More and more. So I think I might pause there because I'm hoping that there are questions, and then the questions will give me a chance to say more. So have we got any questions, Polly? No questions? Okay, so I'll give you a minute. I'm hoping very much that you will have questions about karma. Polly themselves had some in the tea break while I was drinking my cup of tea. Let's see if there's any questions yet. And then if nobody asks a question, we'll go into Polly's question.
Yeah, there's a question about how in Triratna we tend to do ethics, meditation, and study at the same time. Is it better to start with ethics and then meditation?
So this is a question, given that I've said that ethics is first, then meditation, would it be better to start with that? Well, technically speaking, yes, but probably we wouldn't. For most people, meditation is the way in. It certainly was for myself. In a sense, it doesn't matter which your way in is. Like my way in was meditation, but I had to, as I described in the first half, look at my behavior. So in a sense, you can start with either. You can start with Sila or Samadhi, although classically Sila would come in is first. I think if you start with meditation, that's fine because it leads you to Sila. As you know, I imagine you might have experienced in your own life. Yeah, good. Thanks.
There's a question about what to do if someone else has done something wrong. Like, should we act or just will their karma see to it?
Okay, so what happens if someone else has been unskillful? Well, they will be. That's one thing to say. Other people are very unskillful a lot of the time, said slightly tongue-in-cheek. So what should we do in response to that? Well, one thing not to do is if we find ourselves in response to someone else's unskillfulness and getting into righteous indignation, or even subtly or not so subtly wishing that they sort of suffer some consequences for that, then we ourselves are that's not very helpful to ourselves, that we're then closing down ourselves. So the main thing, I think, in response to someone else's unskillfulness is not to react to it. It might be that something has to be done about it. If someone is causing harm to you or to someone else, we're not saying that being a Buddhist means you're just, a sort of, allow people to walk all over you. You certainly might have to take action. But watch your own state of mind in that. If your own state of mind slips into even subtle thoughts of retribution or indignation, more likely to be indignation, isn't it? I noticed that myself today. I was walking through our little park and I saw a group of about 6 people having a picnic, and I could notice myself thinking, well, I'm sure they're not all in the same household. That immediate sort of, well, they're not keeping to the rules. As soon as I notice myself doing that, you can feel yourself tightening. So just watch for getting into righteous indignation. That won't help you. A Buddha, an enlightened being, in response to someone else being unskillful, would completely feel compassion. And the Buddha would feel that compassion because they would know that that person's unskillfulness was going to cause them suffering. I might just say something else on that. This is now me. I'm just kind of riffing off the question a bit. Because the other thing to say about that is, given that unskillfulness, do you remember I was saying that the law of karma says, what did I say again? The consequence of willed action was appropriate to the volition behind that action. That's a kind of maybe rather cumbersome way of saying, you can't, strictly speaking, you can't tell if someone else has been unskillful or not, because you don't know what was behind that action. So, I'd even be careful. This is now talking generally, talking to myself as well, about being too quick to judge whether someone else's action is unskillful or not. You don't know their motivation. Also, you don't know how far they've come along the path already. They might be doing something that looks unskillful, but you don't know. Maybe last year they would have done something much worse, as it were. Maybe this for them represents progression, if you see what I mean. If I'm somebody who used to shout at people a lot, if now all I'm doing is express a mild irritation, then that's progression, and you don't know that about other people. So the classic Buddhist teaching, again, is to look to your own actions and, not be too quick to judge other people's. At the same time, don't let yourself be, trodden on. We are allowed to stop people doing harm. And, the Buddha, certainly, the Buddha wasn't a weakling, the Buddha was strong. Yeah. Yeah. So thanks for that question. It stimulated a few thoughts. Yeah. Yeah.
Jack asked, is karma really intention? Like, is the idea to check our intention is pure?
Okay, so is karma about intention? So karma means action, and so what our intention is the thing that governs. Yeah. The difficult thing is we don't often know ourselves well enough to know what our intentions are, and that's where meditation comes in. Often our intentions are a bit blurred, a bit unconscious, not clear even to ourselves. I mean, on the whole, nobody deliberately acts unskillful on the whole. It's usually because we're muddled, we're unclear, we're unconscious, we're under the sway of various oppressions, we're too busy, too tired, and so on. So where am I going? So yes, we are trying to have what Jack said, purer intentions. But that's going to take some work. And again, that's where working directly on our minds with meditation is. So it's we've got to kind of have our wits about us and our intelligence about us. There's no real sort of stock answers in Buddhism. I'm not going to sit here and tell you, well, this list of things is wrong and this list of things is right. What I'm going to ask you to do is look within your own mind and heart and try and refine that sensibility. Look to your friends as well, and look for guidance to people that are a bit wiser than you. But trying to refine that so that your intentions become more known to yourself, and then you'll be able to act in a more skillful, helpful, beneficial way. So yes. So again, that's exactly right what Jack said. It's about intention. But then intention's not such a simple matter as it might sound as well. So, yeah.
There's a few questions about how do we know what factors affect what happened to us and how some people seem to be unlucky.
Okay. So how do we know what factors affect what happens to us? And some people seem to be unlucky, and I guess other people lucky. It seems we don't know. That is the simple answer. We don't know. If something happens to us, there can be a whole multitude of things. there's different, the law of karma is one law among a number of laws. I mean, a classic examples often given, like say I've got a sore head, say, okay? So that could be a result of something like falling on my head, right? That's the law of gravity. It could be the law of some biological law. Maybe I've got something going on in my brain. It could be some psychological law. It could be like I'm really, really nervous because I've got an interview the next day and that could give me a migraine or something. Or it could be because I've done something unskillful and I'm really feeling remorse about that. So there could be, or it could be a mixture of all those. You don't really know. Sometimes you can have a bit of a sense of it. I think because I practiced for quite a long time now, I know I've learned to recognize the particular uneasy, sort of physical unease I feel when I've done something unskillful. I notice the sort of tension, so I can know that. But lots of times you don't know. And yes, some people seem to be lucky, some people seem to be unlucky. That's true, isn't it? There's another Buddhist word. I hope I'm not giving you too many Buddhist words, but it's punya or merit. So some people just seem a bit blessed. That means they've got a lot of punya. Maybe it's because they were skillful previously. In a sense, it doesn't matter, because the teaching is, no matter how lucky you are, no matter how much punya you have, if you don't keep practicing Sila, Samadhi, Prajna, it will run out. Yeah. So the point isn't how happy or how lucky you feel. In a certain sense, although that's pleasant to feel happy and lucky, in a certain sense, it's irrelevant. What's relevant is how much effort you're making now. Yeah. So there's a little story that sort of ties in with this. I told it many times, a lovely little story about my own teacher, Bhante Sangharakshita, who was in the Buddhist conference while he was still alive, with a panel of sort of eminent Buddhists. And a question came from the floor of what's the hallmark of a Buddhist? And one of these eminent Buddhists said, the hallmark of a Buddhist is always happy. And Bhante Sangharakshita said, I'm sure very politely, he said, actually, I beg to differ on that. He said, the hallmark of a Buddhist, I think, is a Buddhist is always friendly. And he said, because you can't always be happy, but you can always be friendly. So I hope you can see the distinction. Friendliness is kusala karma, is skillful action. It'll affect you in the here and now and affect others, but also it's creating skillful patterning in the mind, whereas happiness just comes and goes. Yeah, even if you're unhappy, you can still be friendly. I think that's very, very important. So yeah, so if you happen to be sort of born lucky, as it were, keep practicing. If you happen to be born unlucky, keep practicing. That's the only thing that counts. Yeah, so really good question. Thank you.
People ask about when well-intentioned action causes harm. So is that still skillful?
Okay, so that's a very good question, a bit more subtle. So when well-intentioned action causes harm. Okay, so that's quite, this is quite a good area. So there's sometimes we talk about the ethics of intention and the ethics of effect. So if you have been well-intentioned and it causes harm, that's, well, you haven't actually been unskillful in the initial thing. You can't always predict how things are going to turn out, yeah? So you haven't been unskillful. even if someone has suffered, you're sorry that they're suffered, of course, but you've not set up a patterning in your mind that's going to sort of be an adverse patterning. But if you do the same thing again, having not learned from the experience, then you're a bit more culpable. Do you see? The first time is just a mistake, isn't it? A mistake is just a mistake. You got it wrong, not intentionally. You didn't have enough information, perhaps. But if you then carry on not learning from that, then that will create a sort of negative patterning in the mind. So you have to take into account the effects for the next time. Sort of in a way quite simple wisdom that you have to learn from your mistakes. But a mistake's not unskillful. Yeah, it can be quite good actually to. I didn't talk about this whole area of guilt and irrational guilt. Sometimes we can feel irrationally guilty when all that's happened is we've made a mistake, and then you can just check. Well, what was my intention? Did I intend to, be unkind or ungenerous? If you didn't, then there's no need to feel remorse for that. There is a need to learn from it for the next time. Yeah. Hope that's helpful. Good question. Thank you, Pippa.
Alex wants to know about, if we're not going deep in meditation, does that mean we need to look at our ethics?
Okay. So if we're not going deeper in a meditation, does that mean we need to look at our ethics? It wouldn't do any harm, would it? I think that's a very, very good question, Alex. I think sometimes, a bit like I did when I was beginning, you can almost reduce meditation to almost a set of techniques that, if it's not going well, you need another sort of technique, or you need to try harder or do it another way, or get a better teacher or get a better practice. But I think we wouldn't do badly to look at what we're doing outside of meditation. As I've been talking about, this crucial area of Sila, whether we're acting in ways that are skillful or unskillful, but also maybe more broadly, are we connecting with beauty enough? Are we connecting with our imagination enough? Are we connecting with our friends enough? So I think we could do a lot more outside meditation to help our meditation. Again, Bhante Sangharajta said, if you prepare for meditation, and he means prepare in all these ways, connecting with beauty, acting skillfully, connecting with friends. He said, when we sit down to meditate, we already will be meditating, which, sounds great, doesn't it? But I believe it. I think if you really were doing all those things, acting skillfully, connecting with beauty and the imagination, connecting with friends, you would be actually in a state of sort of mild meditation all the time. It's possible to live like that. On our residential retreats, when we can have them again, if you're lucky enough to be able to go on one, you might experience, even for a few days or longer, just living in a state that's a bit like meditation while, walking about and doing the washing up and eating your lunch and so on. Very, very good. I'm very, very glad you brought that in, Alex. More?
Kath wondered if you could say something about how karma relates to rebirth.
So how does karma relate to rebirth? So yes, they're often talked about together, karma and rebirth. So let me just think about how to respond to this. So thank you, Kath. Okay, so let me try this. So I think you can think of rebirth in two different ways. I think you can think of it as classically would be as sort of over lifetimes. And maybe the first thing to say is rebirth isn't the same, doesn't mean reincarnation. Reincarnation means something more like, here's me and I'm alive now, and then I'll die and then I'll be born again, but I'll be somebody else somehow. Rebirth, even over lifetimes, doesn't mean that. It's something much more mysterious than that. It's something like this life conditions a life in the future. The closest analogy, the best analogy, I think, is the way like one candle flame ignites the next candle flame. It's not the same flame, but there's a connection between one flame and the next. So traditionally, Buddhism teaches rebirth over lifetimes. But actually, I think you can think about rebirth more metaphorically, almost in the sense of we're sort of born anew every day, every hour, every minute, and that's conditioned by how we're acting previously. So again, to use myself as an example, if I do that thing of go around the whole day with grumpy thoughts, arguments in my head, then I'll be reborn tomorrow as a bit more of a grumpy person. And if I carry on, before I know it, I'll be some like very grumpy old woman, So you can think of rebirth like that as well, that there's a fresh chance every moment, but how we emerge in each moment will have been conditioned by how we acted in previous moments. And if you think of it like that, I think then it also helps you to think about it from lifetime to lifetime. It makes it not so mysterious. It means even over lifetimes, what emerges is purely conditioned on how you acted previously. So I hope that goes a little way in to answer that. We've got another good few minutes, yeah? Got about 10 more minutes of questions, so I can have another 3 or 4.
Okay. Sue asked, how do we recognize skillfulness in other people?
How do we recognize skillfulness in other people? I'd like to know a little bit more about that question. Who's asking that, Sue? Yeah. Maybe, Sue, if you could just type in a little bit more about what's behind your question, and then Polly can maybe give me another question in the meantime.
Phoebe asked, how do we deal with people repeatedly harming us when they have a good intention?
Okay, how do we deal with people repeatedly harming us when they have a good intention? Well, that's very tricky, actually, Phoebe, without knowing the circumstances. Well, it's good that you can recognize that they have got a good intention. I can only really guess here that maybe because they've got a good intention, perhaps you're worried about hurting them. I guess, without knowing the circumstances, there might just need to be an honest conversation, and maybe just trust that if their intention really is for your benefit, they don't want to be harming you. They'd want to know if they were harming you or upsetting you. So, yeah, so perhaps an honest communication, Phoebe. Yeah, I'm only guessing without being able to talk one-to-one. Yeah.
Thomas wants to know about how can we stand up for ourselves while still being skillful?
That's a good question. How can we stand up for ourselves while still being skillful? That's an excellent question, because we definitely want to do both. Yeah, we definitely want to be skillful. But as I was saying, we definitely, we're not kind of letting ourselves be, walked all over or even harmed. So, Yes, so let me think. What am I going to say to this? So I want to really affirm the intention of that. It's interesting, actually. I don't know if this will directly address the question, but earlier we practiced the metta bhavana, the practice of loving kindness. I think it's important to realize that metta, loving kindness, actually makes us strong. That actually sort of actually loving, it's almost like it creates a sort of field of love that's like a force field. Force field isn't quite right, is it? That sounds a bit like, let me just retract that. I don't mean force field. Let me think. Okay, I'm going to try and answer this question in another way. Keep practicing the metta bhavana. That will make us strong. Keep practicing truthful communication. That will make us strong. It's almost the next thing I want to say is going to be a bit counterintuitive, but it's almost like the reason why metta makes us strong is because, in a way, the less selfish, self-centered we are, the less we have to defend. We think, oh, I'm a little me in here, all kind of vulnerable, and I have to defend myself by putting up all this armor. But actually, what we realize is the more we develop metta, the more confident we'll feel, and we'll realize actually that we don't need to defend ourselves so much. And in a way, not defending ourselves so much is, in a counterintuitive way, the sort of best defense, actually. It's a bit like, probably I hope I haven't made it sound more muddled. It's a bit like, when you're really, really annoyed with something, you go up to them and say, I'm really, really annoyed with you. I'm really, really annoyed with you. And you're ready for a fight. And they just say, yeah, you're right. I'm really sorry. And it takes the wind out of your sails by them giving up the defended position and just saying, actually, you're right. I'm really sorry. You can't fight them anymore. By them dropping their guard, actually, they've provided the best defense for themselves. You can't fight them because there's nothing to fight. Whereas if they just meet you fighting, it makes more of a fight. So in the end, the best defense of all is to realize that there's nothing to defend. In the meantime, we just keep that intention of being skillful, but not allowing ourselves to be sort of walked over, sort of pushed over. And that might mean, just some strong, assertive, even communication. Yeah, so I hope that's helped. One more question? Yeah.
George wants to know, how can we cultivate skillful behavior when we're feeling low or when life is difficult?
Skillful behavior when?
When we're low, or they said at a low ebb in life.
Okay, so how can we cultivate skillful behavior when we're at a low ebb in life? I think that's an excellent, very, very good question. So thank you, George. So I want to say two things here. One, I want to sort of acknowledge, yes, when we're feeling low, it can be hard to cultivate skillful behavior, because a skillful behavior means a kind of going out of ourselves, and that can be the hardest thing to do when we're feeling low. At the same time, it's absolutely the best thing to do when we're feeling low. So what I would say is, no matter how low you feel or how at a low ebb, try and do a tiny thing for someone else. Yeah, try and do a random act of kindness. try and do something generous, write a card to someone, just rejoice in someone, tell them just something that you like about them. Maybe, at this time, actually, we're getting more opportunities, aren't we, to be kind, do the shopping for a neighbor. And the reason for that is even though we might not feel like it, that skillful action will move us out of ourselves. When we're feeling low, we tend to close in on ourselves, and we can sort of spiral inwards a bit. And yeah, then also there's all sorts of consequences of that. The minute we do the very first tiny step into generosity, into kindness, we expand ourselves. Yeah. So that it sort of counteracts that tendency to go in on ourselves. So don't wait until you're feeling good to do something kind or generous. In fact, the best time to do it is when you're feeling a bit low. That I must say that's what I try and practice myself. If I'm feeling low or I'm feeling regretful about something, or even if I'm just feeling a bit tired, I just say to myself, go on, Subhadramati, just do something a little bit generous, and it starts to lift you out of it. It's kind of, in a way, that's why I like this idea of connecting behavior and ethical behavior, thinking of it as beautiful. You're sort of bringing more beauty into your life and into the world, and that by its nature is expansive. Yeah. So, yeah, thanks very much for that question. And maybe that's a good one to end on, question-wise. So thanks very much for all those questions. Excellent questions. So in a minute, we're going to end with our ritual. Just want to say one or two more things now. So just want to say a bit about the general culture that we're creating here, or trying to create here at the Buddhist Center. And that is a culture of generosity. That is a culture of moving out. So all of us here on the team, we've just come here tonight and for the whole retreat as an expression of our Buddhist practice. And we wanted to put on the whole retreat for free, but we'd like to invite you to join in this culture of generosity, of moving outwards, by asking you to contribute to the retreat. There's a practical reason for this as well, because we've had to close the doors of the Buddhist Center, had to completely close our retreat center. It means that our main sources of income, we're just not getting them at the moment. So usually for a residential retreat, we'd have 60 people there. So for a week's retreat, we would bring into the centre £20,000, and then we'd use that £20,000 to just carry on with all our activities. So we've had to cancel a number of retreats. We've not got that £20,000. So what my great dream is that on this home retreat, we can, between all of us, raise that £20,000. So that's why I'd like to ask you to contribute to the retreat. And I'd like to ask everyone if you'd consider giving £100 for the retreat. And I asked that last night as well, and I'm delighted to say we made a great start last night. So if you would like to give, I think Ariane's just posting the link. Yeah, she's nodding. So please do consider contributing £100 for the retreat. If you want to contribute more than that, that's absolutely marvellous. We definitely need more. And also, it's fine to give, basically whatever you'd like to, whatever you feel you can afford. And that way you'll be really helping us. You'll be helping us practically, but also you'll be, investing really in this culture of generosity that the whole Buddhist Center is and always has been about. And thank you very much to those of you who've already given. As I say, we've made a fantastic start in this fundraising for this retreat. And then if you're not already on the retreat, do sign up for it. I think we're going to post a link for that. There's lots of links tonight, the link for the retreat. That'll mean you get invitations to all our Zoom meditations, group meetings, and so on. If you are on the retreat, just keep showing up for everything, keep reducing input, keep engaging with beauty, and sign up for the Slack room as well. Meet each other on Slack, share pictures of beauty, share your experiences of the retreat. Good, so I think that's all my general points. Next thing that's going to happen after tonight is tomorrow morning. I'll be back here at 7 o'clock. But what we're going to do tonight is we're going to have a short ritual. We had a ritual last night as well. And a ritual, if you haven't done one yet, is a way of really engaging our imaginations, it's really engaging ourselves with beauty. A ritual's it's like a recitation of poetry, really, that we'll do together. So the ritual consists of 3 short verses that we'll say in call and response, and really encourage you to join in with that. I know it can feel a bit self-conscious doing that on your own at home, but I'd really invite you to, step beyond your self-consciousness and join in with the responses to the ritual. And at the end of the ritual, there'll be a mantra, which I lead. A mantra is a sound symbol for the Buddha. So it's a sound symbol for that ideal that I evoked at the beginning of that complete stillness, that energized, calm, panoramic wisdom, overflowing compassion of the Buddha. And you can join in the chanting of the mantra. And then when the mantra fades away, we'll just sit for a moment and you can just look at the shrine. Then we blow out all the candles and we'll fade away as well. And I really encourage you to have a simple rest of the evening, to maybe have an early night or a nighttime walk, and maybe, just not to do anything too technological after the puja this evening. And to begin our puja, we're going to have a reading that's ancient words of the Buddha from Ariyan. So the order is we'll have the reading from Ariyan, then we'll have the ritual and call and response, then we'll have the mantra, you can join in, and then we'll just end. That will just fade away into silence. So we're going to dim the lights here for our ritual. During the mantra, we'll be making offerings to the shrine as well. So if you've got a shrine at home, you could do that as well. And if you haven't got one, you might like to make one for tomorrow night. Good, so we'll just sit for a moment and then I'll ring a bell, and when I ring the bell, that'll be Ariane's cue for the reading. So just sitting, tuning in with our breath, our bodies. And this reading is going to be from the Dhammapada, an ancient Buddhist text, the words of the Buddha.
Experiences are preceded by mind, led by mind, and produced by mind. If one speaks or acts with an impure mind, suffering follows, even as the cartwheel follows the hoof of the ox drawing the cart. Experiences are preceded by mind, led by mind, and produced by mind. If one speaks or acts with a pure mind, happiness follows like a shadow that never departs. Those who entertain such thoughts as, they abused me, they beat me, they conquered me, they robbed me, will not still their hatred. Those who do not entertain such thoughts as, they abused me, they beat me, they conquered me, they robbed me, will still their hatred. Not by hatred are hatreds ever pacified here in the world. They are pacified by love. This is the eternal law. Others do not realize that we are all heading for death. Those who realize it will compose their quarrels.
The Threefold Puja, opening reverence. We reverence the Buddha,
Reverence the Buddha,
the perfectly enlightened one,
the perfectly enlightened one,
the shower of the way.
the shower of the way.
We reverence the Dharma,
We reverence the Dharma,
the teaching of the Buddha,
the teaching of the Buddha,
which leads from darkness to light.
which leads from darkness to light.
We reverence the Sangha,
We reverence the Sangha,
the fellowship of the Buddha's disciples,
the fellowship of the Buddha's disciples,
that inspires and guides.
that inspires and guides.
Reverence to the three jewels. We reverence the Buddha
We reverence the Buddha
and aspire to follow him.
and aspire to follow him.
The Buddha was born
The Buddha was born
as we are born.
as we are born.
What the Buddha overcame,
What the Buddha overcame,
we too can overcome.
we too can overcome.
What the Buddha attained,
What the Buddha attained,
we too can attain.
we too can attain.
We reverence the Dharma
We reverence the Dharma
and aspire to follow it
and aspire to follow it
with body, speech, and mind
with body, speech, and mind
until the end.
until the end.
The truth in all its aspects,
The truth in all its aspects,
the path in all its stages.
the path in all its stages.
We aspire to study,
We aspire to study,
practice,
practice,
realize.
realize.
We reverence the Sangha
We reverence the Sangha
and aspire to follow it.
and aspire to follow it.
The fellowship of those
The fellowship of those
who tread the way,
who tread the way,
as one by one.
as one by one.
We make our own commitment,
We make our own commitment,
an ever-widening circle.
an ever-widening circle.
The Sangha grows.
The Sangha grows.
Offerings to the Buddha. Reverencing the Buddha,
Reverencing the Buddha,
we offer flowers,
we offer flowers,
flowers that today
flowers that today
are fresh and sweetly blooming,
are fresh and sweetly blooming,
flowers that tomorrow
flowers that tomorrow
are faded and fallen.
are faded and fallen.
Our bodies too, like flowers,
Our bodies too, like flowers,
will pass away.
will pass away.
Reverencing the Buddha,
Reverencing the Buddha,
we offer candles
we offer candles.
to him who is the light.
To him who is the light,
We offer light
we offer light.
from his greater lamp,
From his greater lamp,
a lesser lamp we light within us,
a lesser lamp we light within us.
the lamp of Bodhi shining
The lamp of Bodhi shining
within our hearts.
within our hearts.
Reverencing the Buddha,
Reverencing the Buddha,
we offer incense.
we offer incense.
Incense's fragrance
Incense's fragrance
pervades the air.
pervades the air.
The fragrance of the perfect life,
The fragrance of the perfect life,
sweeter than incense,
sweeter than incense,
spreads in all directions
spreads in all directions
throughout the world.
throughout the world.
Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Swaha 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 Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Swaha. Lovely to spend the evening with you and see you in the morning.